We've got MMA announcer and commentator John Ramdeen, who just got back from the United Arab Emirates for UAE Warriors back-to-back action-packed MMA event. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. A little tired. I'm sorry that the voice is a little worn out, but sometimes these are things that can't be avoided.
Well, we've heard your voice and we saw you obviously on FightPass because you were part of the broadcast team there covering both events. I'm talking about UAE Warriors 30 and UAE Warriors Arabia 8. And you lost your voice because you were doing some great commentary and you got really into it. So let's dive right into it, John. I'd like to know if you could use one word to describe UAE Warriors 30. What word would you use?
Okay, this is kind of cliche, but the word that sums up the entire weekend, just for me in general, was fire. Was hot. You can use those words interchangeably because it was blistering hot temperature wise in the UAE and in Abu Dhabi. I think it was almost 45 degrees and you felt it. And even the locals told me, yes, it's normally hot, but they said it's unusually hot. So just to take in the heat of the desert and then just how gorgeous and fire the architecture of the Etihad Arena and just all the surrounding buildings with the attention to detail, it is really something to behold. So just to be able to go into this venue that, from my understanding, was created specifically for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, because this is a country and a city that truly embraces combat sports and jiu-jitsu at the roots, but they have a true love for mixed martial arts. So I was absolutely thrilled to be a part of this thing because, you get to go to one of the combat sports capitals of the world, this gorgeous venue. And, this is the first show I'm doing for them. So every show is the most important show. It's essentially an audition to see if you fit with this organization. So, I was hit with jet lag and, there's all this doubt because of COVID. You haven't been doing these shows regularly. So there's all these things that you're working with a new team. But at the end of the day, you're just hoping that these fight cards deliver. And these two shows were absolutely mind-blowing. Like these athletes really, it seemed like everyone thought they were in a championship fight and that they really took to heart that warrior spirit and the old school. The fans are here watching to get a show of mixed martial arts violence, and it seemed like every fight was trying to outdo the next fight. Like it was really something to be a part of. And then what happened in the main event or after the main events, that happened. And when you have crazy knockout, I just get so swept up in these athletes because it's such a small portion of planet Earth, less than 1%. Like how many people actually get themselves to a point where they're signing on a dotted line, stepping inside of a cage, and this is all bets are off. You've got these tiny gloves. They've been training for you for however many weeks. You've been training for them. This is not playtime. This is for me to get to be a part of that. And I almost feel like I want to give these athletes such a presentation. And then I just get swept into the moment of what's going on and the carnage and the violence. And then after these guys and girls beat the hell out of each other, they're hugging each other and there's no malice. And I just simply love it. And to be a part of it was something awesome.
Well, you guys, you did an excellent job as far as the broadcast team. It's interesting you say that it was your first time working with them because you guys gelled really well. It was four individuals. I believe two were from like yourself and the announcer were from the Americas, right? And the other two, I think one was from Brazil and the other one was from the Middle East or North Africa. So it was a really interesting international broadcast team, broadcasting both events that had a really interesting global representation of fighters. I think for UAE Warriors 30, I believe you had something like 15 countries represented.
Yeah.
It was excellent booking. It was really cool. I'm talking every continent essentially was represented. Let's dive right into it. There were 2 title fights. What are your thoughts on the first title fight between Taleb versus Oliveira for the Bantamweight title? Give us a summary of that match from what you recall.
Oh, I was so excited about that fight because this Brazilian Oliveira is actually very, very good. He's very exciting. He's still young. He's like 26 years old. His record going into the fight, 17-2. Like, it's ridiculous in this day and age. Like, it's very difficult to win fights because there's so many good athletes at every level. So to be able to get 26 years old and have 17 wins, and it's Brazil. Like, he's coming from Brazil, so you can imagine the level of competition there. So, and then he's fighting this undefeated guy from Switzerland who is just a tank. And again, one of my favorite things going into it is at the press conference, Ali Taleb is like, he's willing to die in there for this, for this fight to win this belt and to remain undefeated. And Oliveira's like, so you're ready to die? He's like, perfect, because I'm ready to kill. So this just fits perfectly into the plan. So this kid really understands how to sell it, and it was super fun. And it's one of those things that you don't recommend because Oliveira was having fun and he was trying to get into his flow state. But the whole purpose of martial arts, from my perspective, when I go into, it's not as if whenever I went to go train that there was any thought of that I'm going to be competing in any type of sports. When I got myself involved in any type of martial arts, it's for the sole purpose of self-defense, self-preservation. And that is, in my opinion, the number one thing that you need to be aware of is you have to keep yourself safe. You have to keep yourself safe because you are the only one besides the referee. The referee is in there to ensure your safety, but they're not the ones that are going to prevent you from getting kicked in the head or punched in the face or whatever it is. You have to do that first. When you fall to the ground, they're going to do their best to get there as quickly as possible. But you have to make sure that you can walk out of that cage on your own 2 feet and make sure you come back to make some money if this is what you feel that your path is. Now, I understand there's some fighters that are just like that. Max Holloway, that's just them. They go and they fight crazy. Anderson Silva's the same back in the day. But sometimes when you play with fire, you get burned. And that's what happened. De Oliveira looked sensational. Like, he had a path to victory. If he was just more defensive, he probably would have won that fight. But one of the things you can't teach is heart. And Taleb, whose legs were getting beaten up, and he was having a difficult time trying to solve De Oliveira. But the cliche, you bite down on the mouth guard and you just wing that big haymaker, and it paid off. And it was absolutely incredible. And I went nuts, and the whole place went nuts. And I'm sure people around the world went nuts watching that fight. Because, it's just one of those special moments where that's kind of what you want from a title fight. You want, you have the champion, he's doing well, he's on, but his adversary is not backing down. He's getting beaten up, and he finds a way to claim the title. So it's just awesome to be a part of and to see this. And when you're 6-0 and you're now 7-0, and people keep talking about, he's from the same gym as Hazmat Shemaev. Well, obviously, and you're on UFC Fight Pass, so there's only a matter of time before you get the call to go to the UFC. Right. So this is just all of these factors. It was like I said, just awesome to see from everyone's perspective, except for De Oliveira, because you feel bad for this fallen champion who is he had no idea what was going on. I just kept saying, what happened? What happened? That's why you screwed around. That's what happened. You can't do that. And hopefully he dusts himself off. He and his team. I mean, sometimes that's the way these fighters are. They can't help it. They just are action fighters, and they just want to go out and they want to entertain and live by the sword, die by the sword. And that's why we love guys like Zerhouni and Wanderlei Silva and some of these crazy fighters that just go in there with reckless abandon sometimes. So. I just think he's going to come back stronger, and I would not be. I just don't think maybe Taleb is remains there, but I would not be surprised if this title gets vacated and ends up being a Canadian versus actually a rematch for the vacant title. You know what I mean? De Oliveira You have Xavier Alaoui wins the 35-pound title the next night. So, I mean, there's lots of storylines if anything happens. And the UAE Warriors, they understand that these guys, he said, this is a platform. This organization says this is a platform for these young fighters to get their feet wet, have a bunch of fights here, become champions here, establish their career here, and go on to the next thing, whether that's the UFC, PFL, Bellator, whatever it is. And I think that's what all these fighters love about this organization, is that they're kind of doing things the right thing. I've heard nothing but great things. You know, everybody's going to complain about money. That's just the factor. But all these fighters are absolutely thrilled the way that they've been treated by this organization, and they all want to fight for them.
Now, John, what was the vibe like at the arena during this particular fight and all fights? What was the energy like? Because we can kind of hear, you know, the engaged audience, but from your perspective, what was the vibe like in there?
The vibe is, and it's just like what they profile on the second show. You know, the first show is all of, this is a show, UAE Warriors 30 is a show that is, they're trying to assemble the best fighters from all over the world. As you mentioned, we're here to make sure it's a global scope, and we're here to deliver action-packed, awesome fights, whether these fighters are just starting off, they only have a couple of fights, or they're seasoned veterans like Jesse Arnett. And you saw that. But the big thing is their goal is to give a platform for a lot of these Arab fighters. And that was what the second night was all about. So to see the excitement and hear the excitement of the crowd supporting the Arab fighters, and I've seen it before. I mean, you go to Montreal to call fights, and they want the local people to win, and right. It makes fun, and they're supporting their local athletes, and that's awesome. And I love the fact that Jesse Arnett gets that, and he gets to play heel, and he played the heel absolutely perfectly. You know, I know a lot of people hate the pro wrestling and mixed martial arts comparison, but that's tough. The fact is, mixed martial arts was born from professional wrestling, and Jesse is just one of the very, very few people that really understand it and can embrace it. And he's the type of fighter that I love to watch. A guy that really understands every single facet of the game and absolutely plays it up. Because the first and foremost, you can't focus on mic skills. Your goal is to focus on winning fight skills. And Jesse knows how to win fights. I was there. I saw him win the title. And anybody that complains about the way he won a title, he put the AlQaisi threw a kick. He slipped. Jesse jumped on him and threw those elbows, and he cut him wide open. And it's not his fault. The doctor said, no, this fight can't continue. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. So, but the whole scenario, it's like I said, it was just a great 2 nights. And that's what I'm saying with AlQaisi, this guy, you would have thought you're talking about the, who could I compare him to? Like, not Volkanovski, because people don't seem to love Volkanovski, but
he's incredible. Volkanovski.
No, Volkanovski, I'm saying from a skill standpoint, but I just watched the thing saying that people boo him and they talk crap about him. And it's like, I don't understand. And the same thing back in the day with Dan Cormier. A lot of people booed him for years and years. And something switched. Thank God something switched. Now the fans absolutely love Cormier, and I'm sure that Volkanovski, that's going to happen for him.
Well, they love Volkanovski in Australia and in New Zealand, and I'm not saying that they don't in the US and Canada, but I think he gets more props in his territory. But yes, I want to go back to the Jesse Arnett versus Ali AlQaisi. Obviously, it was for the UAE featherweight title. If people are watching this interview right now, please make sure you watch the fight on FightPass, because it was actually quite an entertaining fight. What I'd like to know from your perspective, you guys were calling this right from the top. Lead us through round one from what you recall in terms of both performers, both competitors, and their overall performance. What were you I'm sure you've rewatched the fight, right?
I actually haven't rewatched the fight.
Oh, you haven't?
I haven't. I've only rewatched the ending of the fight. I just actually got back last night. And it's just was a long trip, like I said, because of as soon as that fight was done, I had a show the next day to worry about. So, and then on top of that, I got to hang out with all these guys. Like after, I was so thrilled to call Jesse's fight because Jesse's one of my friends. So to be able to go and celebrate with him after he won the championship, I mean, that was just, those are some of the moments that I love about being involved in this, is that I have the great fortune of getting to go behind the curtain sometimes to hang out with these guys. Like the day of the fight, we're all having breakfast. It's Jesse's there, his brother's there, his coaches are there. Ali Charkey, who fights in Unified MMA, he was there. Tanner Bozer, UFC heavyweight, was there with us. So we're all there just having a great time talking about stuff and just having laughs. And those are some of the moments that I absolutely love, because we get to share some cool stories, and just you get to hear, what it takes for some of these guys to be professional mixed martial artists, because Jesse's a seasoned veteran fighting for a title around the world. Tanner Bozer's one of the top heavyweights on planet Earth. Ali Charkey's this up and coming emerging star. And so just to get to hear, stories about MMA, but stories about their life, you get to hear what the truth is about the status of things. And it's just to get to be a part of that stuff, and then to deliver for him. I was going nuts for him. I just want to do my part to shine some light on how incredible these athletes are. And when I because I remember the fight, and I normally don't score fights. Like I don't like scoring fights myself, because I know it's not perfect. So even if I think that, okay, well, I think he won this round, or I think he won this round, it doesn't really matter. It's at the end of the day, it's whatever these judges, I know what I've seen, because there's lots of times where I watch a fight where I don't even care about this decision. I just know what I watched.
Right.
So it's irrelevant to me what the judges saw. I know what I saw. So what I saw before the stoppage was, I saw a competitive championship fight. I saw that Jesse was in trouble when AlQaisi put him in that guillotine choke, and Jesse told me that. My throat was a little sore after that. So I know how tight this was, but it was back and forth, and these are the things that happened. Jesse was ready to go 25 minutes. So and I know AlQaisi was ready to go 25 minutes, but the fact is that's what happened, is that he threw a kick, he fell, Jesse jumped on him and did what he had to do to finish the fight. And then whatever happened after that just added to the incredible storyline.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting, because the first round, it seemed like the volume of strikes and just the movement from AlQaisi was he was on the offensive, and obviously his opponent was equally on the offensive, maybe more countering more, but he took him down, I believe, in the first round. Arnett took him he took him down, and he also had some good boxing, but it seemed like the volume of just, when you see someone very active.
And the speed. AlQaisi had the speed, and he had the mobility, and he landed lots of punches. Jesse, and he even said that to me. He's like, he felt off the mark, because there's lots of times when Jesse missed him, and he missed him by a big margin. So, I mean.
And it was his first time. I believe it was his first time fighting at 145, right?
145 pounds.
Right.
That's right.
For Arnett. So, I mean, but what's interesting, because I watched it a couple of times, John, and I must say, I think the way you described it is definitely it, in terms of that second round. AlQaisi, he threw a kick, lost his balance, he fell, and Arnett completely capitalized on it. He capitalized on the situation, as you mentioned, and he dropped that hellacious elbow. And I mean, I think it was one elbow, the first elbow, and he just cracked him open, And at that point, what was, from your advantage as a commentator there, what was the vibe like in there? Because we could hear the fans. AlQaisi's, man, this guy's got fans all over the place. It seems like they were all in that arena.
Yeah. He was. He's a big star there, and he's just one of these guys. I mean, that's what you want in a fighter. You want a guy that's aggressive. You want a guy that represents this. He's there. He's a very, very proud guy. Proud first first fighter to represent Jordan to go to the UFC.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? Those are big things. So Jesse is standing in front of his dreams of getting back to the UFC. You know what I mean? So emotion is high, and you know, all it takes is one mistake. And you know, maybe it wasn't a mistake. He's thrown a kick and he slipped. Those are things, like I said, those are things that happen. But you have to win all these moments. That's what makes this sport absolutely crazy, is that you have to win. You got to try to win every moment. And you can't always be winning every moment, but you have to try to win these every single moment, because if you don't win every single moment, moments like this happen.
Right.
Where you might be the better skilled fighter. You might have, you know, the better arsenal. But if you make that error, and the error was, if it's just like the Chris Weidman thing, should he have thrown that kick? Luke Rockhold pounced on him, just like Jesse pounced on AlQaisi. And all it takes is one mistake, and all it takes is one advantage. And Jesse created that advantage with that elbow of his, because that's Jesse's. Even though he's good at punching people in the face, his bread and butter's on the ground. He's a guy that takes you down and beats you up. And as soon as you try to find a way out, he's going to choke you out. And if he can't choke you out, he's still just going to try to beat you up. So, you know, I think the doctor did the right thing, because Jesse was just going to keep hammering that. Like, there's a target there now.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, the reality is, look, you create storylines, they get another payday. That's what I want. The fans, you know, the fans got exactly. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's an excellent point, because at that point, when he won and just what happened afterwards, I'm like, man, this is, one part of me was like, this is a spectacular way to lead into a rematch. Not only that, he's got a documentary that's being filmed on his journey, right? And
you know what's funny? This night was supposed to be the culmination of the documentary. This was supposed to be the end of it. He's like, oh man, this is supposed to be it. It's supposed to be over. But now there's a rematch. So it continues. Yeah, it continues.
I mean, which is brilliant, because it really draws us in. And now, as you mentioned from the top, that now he's the heel, Jesse Arnett, because supposedly before I suppose he was a face. But it's interesting. And there's a lot to say about Arnett and the way, like, his ability to communicate on that mic is gold, man. His promos. And look, I too am a fan of his. In fact, I interviewed you 4 years ago. I don't know if you remember.
I remember. At the Nabil show, of course.
That's right. Here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I mean, you were talking about, you had mentioned Arnett, and at the time he was fighting at TKO in Montreal and so on. But his mic skills, his ability to just, you know, put everything on the line and story tell, not just the fighting, but just the communicating, is it's a masterclass in marketing and hype, you know, and I think legit hype too. Sorry,
100%. And then the biggest shame about this whole scenario, and I'm glad Jesse is where he is, that the UAE Warriors, and he's having a great time. He loves fighting for that promotion, but Jesse should be fighting at the highest level. And Jesse should be fighting for the UFC. He should have been fighting for the UFC for years and years and years, because the reality is, I'm not saying Jesse would win every fight in the UFC, but he'd be like a Jim Miller or Donald Cerrone, where you win 2, you lose 1, you win 3, you lose 1. And the only ones that he's losing are guys like Nate Maness, who are already in the UFC. Like, that's just a fact of facts. Jesse belongs. AlQaisi fought in the UFC. Jesse beat him. So the guy certainly should be competing at the highest level. And you know, you couple that with his mic skills, it's a shame that he's not there.
Yeah, I know it is. And I mean, who knows, it might happen. But as far as winning the UAE featherweight title for Jesse Arnett, that itself, I mean, for anyone really, quite frankly, is a major achievement. John, what are your thoughts on him winning this title? What does it mean for Arnett?
I mean, he was, you know, everybody keeps doubting him. Because, you know, he's no spring chicken. You know, he is, and he said this to me, that he's closer to the end of his career than the beginning of his career. He knows that. So for Jesse to win this title, he wasn't supposed to win this fight against the Jordanian. He wasn't supposed to win his last fight against the Russian. And he keeps winning these fights. So, it's awesome what happened. What happened at the end of the fight with AlQaisi going bonkers and Jesse, I saw an article, MMA Junkie, talking about me going crazy, unnecessarily going crazy. And I was going crazy because I don't think people saw when Jesse jumped on the top of the cage. AlQaisi came running around, and Jesse turned because he saw him running, and Jesse fell off the top of the cage.
Oh, wow.
He fell off the top of the cage onto the apron. So what is that? 7 feet. So he's looking to defend himself against AlQaisi, who's running at him. He falls backwards onto the ring apron, hits that, crashes on that hard, and then falls onto the floor. Another 5 feet. Xavier Alaoui's coach, George St. Pierre's buddy, Richard Ho, is cage side, and he says to me, "I thought he was dead."
Wow. Wow.
Oh yeah.
We didn't see this. We didn't see this portion.
It says, if you watch, you didn't see that part? You didn't see him fall?
No, I mean, we saw him jump over, and then from there, from that camera angle, you can't actually see him. Like you can't see anything after that. You hear the commentators, yourself and everyone, but we didn't actually see what happened outside. And I believe that the camera, cut away to an extreme wide of the whole arena. But
he broke his hand or broke his fingers when he fell.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, so I was going nuts because everybody's trying to what is going on? His coach got punched in the face. Like it was.
Okay.
I
didn't hear this. We didn't hear any of this. We didn't see.
It was quite a spectacle, and that's why it was very heated in there. And people are saying there's back and forth where AlQaisi's saying that Jesse called him a mother effer, and that he begged the doctor to stop. That Jesse told the referee to stop the fight, and Jesse's like, "I never said any of that stuff." He's like, "I love being in here. I want to keep smashing. The doctor saved your life." So the whole heated exchange was just absolutely bonkers. And, so I was going crazy because, again, Jesse's my friend. The guy fell really, really hard. The guy could have broken his neck.
Wow. So, no, absolutely. And this is interesting that you're mentioning this, because I don't think most fans were aware of what happened because we weren't able to see that. But I must say, when you said what you said, it was interesting too, because you made a very important point about the fact that, what's happening now shouldn't overtake the entire value and purpose of this event. And I think any fan of the sport or any combat sport can respect that point, because it happens sometimes. It's happened before in mixed martial arts. Heck, it's happened in other sports as well. And you made that very key, from a comms perspective, very key, important message that no, this is just, a heated moment that went sideways, and it doesn't represent the overall value of that. Can you tell us why you made that point?
Yeah. I mean, it's because it's not like other sports. You have to. A lot of people have to remember this isn't basketball. This isn't football or soccer. This is, it's mixed martial arts is lumped into a sport, but there's way more consequences than people realize. And it's very difficult for people to put themselves into the shoes of these fighters. That this is such a stressful environment, and you've worked so hard and you've sacrificed. Like AlQaisi's moved to the US. He lives in the States now to try to ensure his dream of defending this title for his Arab family and his Arab supporters, in hopes of when he does relinquish this title, that's because he gets called back to the big show, and he gets to truly represent his country and his followers and supporters as he moves on to the big stage. So the stakes are just so high. In addition to that, those stakes are low relative in comparison to the fact that you're facing a supreme athlete who has very, very dangerous abilities and that can change your facial structure and it can change your life. Like, I know stories of UFC champions and friends of mine that have been in the room with them where they wake up screaming in the middle of the night because of post-traumatic stress, because they wake up with having this fighter on top of them smashing their heads in. So, like, one of the biggest fighters in the history of the world I'm talking about. So
fascinating.
Yeah, so you're playing for keeps here. So when the emotions and the stress is so high, and AlQaisi would have fought right then. If the doctor hadn't have stepped in, you think he would have gotten out of this fight? Absolutely not. And who knows? He could have won. He could have won. Right. So
I mean, yeah, the pressure was definitely on for everybody. And you're right. And I think the doctor, you know, I have to say, ultimately, at the end of the day, a doctor's decision is a doctor's decision. The official has to abide by it. Yeah. And it's in the best interest of the fighter's health and everyone involved. And he'll get a rematch. And I think they'll get a rematch with a bigger raison d'etre, with a bigger global audience, because now this has gotten everyone's interest, you know. And I mean, they're both excellent fighters, and we want to see this rematch. And at the end of the day, I just think that, you know, the vested interest just got compounded. And I'm curious to see as to how they work this rematch in terms of the storytelling part, because Arnett, I mean, he did 2 interviews, obviously one right after, you know, winning this. And one thing I can appreciate about him in terms of his ability to communicate is he's got key points immediately. Like, it's almost like his brain just goes to, you know, key messages. What do I need to translate? And he put over the rematch immediately. He said, let's do this again, you know. And the fans were booing, but all those people booing are going to buy tickets to the rematch, right? But ultimately, for AlQaisi, how do you see him beating Jesse Arnett? How would AlQaisi, learning what he's learned now, because it seems like Arnett says he has the formula to beat AlQaisi yet again. So what do you think he's going to do?
I mean, Jesse, I mean, you know, I understand what Jesse's saying, but that's in a perfect scenario. That's in a perfect scenario where he gets the takedown. Now he said he didn't have the ability to wrestle or to do jiu-jitsu camps for this fight. He's like, as soon as I get myself into a situation where I can do this, it's going to be a bloodbath. And I'm paraphrasing. So, but for AlQaisi, he's going to be like, okay, well, I don't want him on top of me. So I'm just going to minimize any type of scenario where I am left on one foot. So I was being very successful by using my mobility and just my speed, by throwing combination of punches and being on the offensive and just using constant movement. And I mean, that seems like it's his path to victory, and I would not be surprised if that's the strategy. So mobility is key, because he cannot be a standing target for Jesse to grab a hold of his legs and put him on his back and do exactly what we know Jesse's capable of. So I think, but he's a proud dude. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's like, you know what, I'm going to put you on your back. So he's a complete mixed martial artist, and he trains with good people and good coaches, and he has a ton of bodies to work with. And, you know, it's mixed martial arts. You know, like you can say that you have a game plan, but until, like, I'm sure Rodolfo Vieira didn't expect to be choked out in the UFC, one of the top jiu-jitsu guys on planet Earth. But it's not jiu-jitsu, it's mixed martial arts. So, you know, you can come from a kickboxing background and you come into MMA and still be knocked out. So it all depends on so many things. And when is that next fight? When is AlQaisi? That cut is huge. So it's going to take a while for that to heal. And then he has to get into training camp. So, but I mean, there's also, you're developing skills. Once he goes back to the gym, he's adding to his toolbox and his arsenal. So every time these fighters get into the cage, you would expect they're just better versions. Now Jesse, I mean, they both have information. that's why I love these fights, because they're world-class fighters, and it's obvious when you watch them. And when you see these world-class fighters and world-class athletes that have access to, Jesse was training at Sanford MMA. So when you have access to, camps like that, and the ability to go abroad to train, to get good bodies, I mean, it's absolutely key.
It certainly is. And I mean, overall, I think this match was a very interesting one. And I think everyone's looking forward to seeing the upcoming rematch. We don't know when it's going to be, of course, but I think you're looking for it. I'm looking for it. And most people watching this interview are looking for it. But beyond, I'm going to move on from this match, because I swear, I think I could talk to you about it for another hour. So this evening we had, for UA 30, we had 13 matches in total, fighters from over 15 countries or so, I believe. As I mentioned, it was a global international event, and the matchmaking, the booking was great, because it's great to see that global representation of this international sport that's, on hot, and it's on fire, and it's gaining more fans every day. Now, besides these title fights, there were 2 title fights. Which other fighters really made a major statement for you? Who impressed you the most, and why? Give us 2 or 3 names from the first night that really resonated with you, and you were like, yeah, this is someone we should be watching closely.
That really was. I think what surprised me most was, I think, all of them. I think it was one of those situations that I don't have expectations when, because a lot of these fighters, they're just taking their first few steps, and and what I saw is that they had a platform, because every one of them, whether they were 0-0 or 2-0 or whatever the case may be, they get to walk out onto the platform, onto the catwalk, with fireworks exploding. Right. Like they were treated like they were superstar athletes. So to look at any of these, any of their performances, it's like I said, they treated every one of their bouts like they were championship bouts. So I'm just going to bring up the fights so I can have them in front of me. And
you mentioned this. You said, yeah, I'm quoting you here. You said, each fight feels like it should be a main event. I wrote that down. I don't know if you could see it, but I found that to be very telling, because it's true. Each fight, I mean, for both nights, each round, each fight, hella entertaining, but everyone was raising the stakes, and you could hear it from the fans on site, and the commentary as well. But like there were finishes, back-to-back finishes, submissions, KOs, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So now that I'm looking at the card, one of the fighters that was so impressive was the Jacqueline Cavalcante. She was 2-0, and she was fighting Kutsenko, who had so much more experience than her in professional mixed martial arts and boxing, and to see how clean Cavalcante's striking abilities were, and she was so calm under pressure, and she looked like she had 10 fights. So to see how smooth she was, and then just the way she finished the fight, was just absolutely spectacular. That's literally how you want to end your fight. That's what you want it from start to finish, where she took basically zero damage. I saw her the next day. Her face was completely unblemished. It was one of those perfect performances where she really rode the wave right away. She got into that flow state. So that was amazing. But I mean, the show kicked off with Penales with that KO stoppage as well. Like, so I'm looking at the card, and it was like, they were all amazing. Brian Hoyt with an amazing KO head kick knockout, possibly the best head kick knockout that I've ever seen. There was one. What? There was a submission. Nacionales, I believe, that was left in a heap in front of us, and it was, oh man, something to see, because he didn't tap. He just went out cold, and he fell right in front of us. And I think that
was the second night, right?
That was the second night.
Arabia. Yeah, we'll get into that one. That one was a great fight. But overall, it seems like, overall, the matches were certainly action packed, and the booking certainly spoke to that. If I could ask you, which match was the fight of the night, John? Which match at UAE 30 really took the card, in your opinion?
Okay, so I'll give you two perspectives. I'll give you my perspective, and I'll give you what I believe to be the arena's perspective. So my perspective, the main event, because Jesse's my guy, and he's not really supposed to win this title. He's got a camera crew following him around to do a documentary on his life. He's kind of in enemy territory, fighting the hometown guy who is the champion, who everybody absolutely loves. And he somehow, with his brother cage side, manages to win this title in incredible fashion. And then all the nonsense that, like I said, you don't really want this, because there's a lot of people that don't, that mixed martial arts isn't palatable for them. And they have certain ideas about the sport and everybody that's involved in the sport. So when they see something like this, it's like, oh, I'm not surprised. So when they really just don't understand it. So I don't want that to be like we talked about before, the focus of things. So, right. But I love it from a selling standpoint, and from pro wrestling standpoint, and from the fact that, okay, it gets people interested. It gets me interested. It gets me excited. So I think that's, for me, from my standpoint, I think that was the best fight of the night. But if you ask the arena, Ali Taleb, who is losing that fight, knocks out De Oliveira in incredible fashion, you would think that he just won the UFC championship, because the place went insane. And that is exactly what everybody in the arena was hoping for. They're chanting Taleb all night long. And, De Oliveira came to fight. De Oliveira came in there to decapitate that guy, but Taleb never backed down, and he took the pain, and he kept trying to find a way, and he did, and the place went bonkers.
It certainly did, man, and it was an awesome event. And for you, obviously, you and the crew there, you were absorbing all that, and you were telling the stories. But that wasn't just one event for the weekend. You had an event. The following day, you had UAE Warriors Arabia 8. Now, tell us, what were your overall thoughts of this for this particular event? How would you describe it to fans?
It felt like the promoter went into the back room and said, look, those guys from that show last night, they're all laughing at you. They think they're telling you that this show is going to be a dud and that nobody's going to pay attention because those guys were the real show. That's really what it felt like to me, because the Arabia 8, it felt like they were trying to outdo that show. Did they? Maybe.
I mean, it was spectacular. I couldn't believe how entertaining every match was, and we're going to get into it, because I have some questions to ask you in regards to the fighters' IQ and capabilities, because it seemed that it ranged all over the place. At the end, it produced great matches, but we'll get into that. Actually, for context, do you want to just tell us about what this Arabia series is all about? Because I think it's made up of fighters from the diaspora, from the Arabic diaspora, right? There's something like 26 competitors from 13 countries. Can you give us some context as to what the theme of this series is all about?
Yeah, and I love it. I think it's an idea of giving fighters that have Arab backgrounds a platform to, this is something different. They said, we're trying to promote our own people. We have our international show. This is fighters that have Arab backgrounds. They don't necessarily have to live in those countries. Xavier Alaoui, for example, resides in Canada. He's a Canadian guy, but his roots are Moroccan. So if you have some sort of ties, you're able to compete for this, different belt. And I think it's awesome. So, and that's, really what it's all about, is to shine a light on how good these athletes are, these Arab athletes, and to promote the sport for Arabs that might be interested in getting involved in it. So I think they're just trying to create a platform. They're shining a light, and maybe creating some education for some of these Arab individuals that might want to get involved.
For sure, and it's a brilliant way to market the sport within that region, but also to showcase the global expansion of mixed martial arts, as we're seeing all these competitors. As I mentioned, I believe it's 26 competitors from 13 countries. And you're looking at all these fighters. You're seeing such a range of talent. So many young, talented fighters, like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds.
Exactly.
Lots of potential. Now, the question for you in terms of that, obviously, I found every match entertaining, and I found the concept of this Arabia series really cool and original, in the sense that it's a regional one. It's a regional series, but it has a global reach, and it's being broadcasted on this platform for FightPass. So, it's a win-win for anyone fighting there who wants global exposure, even though they're fighting, quote unquote, regionally. What were, in terms of fighters' IQ, as I was mentioning before, what was your overall and skill set? What was your impression of some of these fighters' strength, and maybe areas that they need more work on? What were some of the weaknesses? Because I saw a lot of heart, I saw a lot of passion, I saw skill too, but I also saw some gaps in terms of some fighters' games. Give us your spin on the overall talent.
Yeah, I mean, the talent is that these culturally, these are all true fighters. They have a mentality of going forward, enduring pain, looking for the finish. They're there. They have an understanding of what is entertaining and what people want to see, and the deficiencies are just simple skill deficiencies, and it's a deficiency that really the majority of the world had, and that's the grappling or the wrestling deficiency, or in the jiu-jitsu deficiency. And that's why the UAE and Abu Dhabi, they've got hundreds, if not thousands, of Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts that have populated the city. Their goal is to be the jiu-jitsu city, of the jiu-jitsu country of the world. They want to compete with Brazil to have elite jiu-jitsu. And from what they were telling me that the police officers, in order to be a police officer in Abu Dhabi, you have to be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt.
Wow.
So
that's amazing. That's amazing.
I mean, that makes sense. And when I was there, I did a story that jiu-jitsu is in the curriculum of the schools. That martial arts helps develop confidence, and you need self-defense and so on and so forth. So just they embrace that. So, and just like England was years ago, where it's like, the English don't know how to wrestle. Well, they've caught up, and that's what's happening. You're seeing some of the deficiencies positionally when the fight hits the ground. And sometimes that can be fun because it can be sloppy and people get swept and mistakes are made, and all of those things kind of contribute to the fact that a 1-on-1 fighter there's a finish there, is because they lack in those skills. And when somebody's just swinging crazy, somebody ends up getting knocked out or whatever. So, I think that's part of the appeal, is that these fighters are, even if they are lacking in skills, they don't care. They live by the sword, die by the sword, and we're the benefactors.
For sure. And it's as you mentioned before, I quoted you. You said each fight feels like it should be a main event, and it's. I mentioned that again because it's true, more so even for the Arabia series. These guys. I mean, you had one guy fighting with. Remember, I think it was. I'm going to mispronounce names here. Sorry, folks. The guy with the broken foot from Morocco.
Adam Baskini.
Yeah, I could not believe the heart on
outrageous.
That guy. His friggin' ankle was broken, I believe, or something to that
effect.
He
was in a wheelchair. So I'll tell you that. Because there was lack of communication, but afterwards, the guy is in a wheelchair. Like, not just the night of the fight, the next day at breakfast, he's in a wheelchair at the hospital, at the hotel. And how many times he got knocked down and he broke his foot, and to be able to come back and win in that fashion, like, that was the fight that really, of any of the fights, that surprised me, because I didn't know these guys. Like, they don't have a whole lot of fights. So like, you know them from what you can see, what you can find. And for him to do that, it was just really something to watch. And like I said, everybody felt like they were, no, this is my show. This is the Adam Moschini show. I don't know who this Jesse Arnett is. I'm the main event, and that's what it felt like all night with all these fighters.
It was nuts, man, and it was incredible to see the heart and that determination from each fight. But there was also 3 title fights, of course, and let's dive right into the title fights. Give us your thoughts on the flyweight championship, between Abzakh versus Yahia, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing these competitors' names. This was Abzakh won via rear naked choke in the 3rd round, but he didn't make weight, so obviously
he screwed himself. He screwed himself because I mean he looked sharp. Yeah, he's good too, and he's gonna bounce back from this. He's a little tank. The guy was a machine, but he just went after it too hard, and he got himself in bad positions, and he just head hunting too much. And he'll come back better. But Abzakh too, he screwed himself because he owned that guy. And if he had just made the weight, he would have left there the champion.
That's right. So I mean, there's always a lesson to be learned, right? For all these folks. And Abzakh went on to winning he didn't win the flyweight.
Didn't win.
But I think I think that there's a lesson learned, and
the lesson is he's the uncrowned king, and you just created another story.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, those are all things that you had. Unfortunately for him, like he doesn't get his whatever. He doesn't. I don't know how it works. I would imagine if he had one, he signs a championship contract. He didn't get to do that, so he's lost out on more money. So the lesson, hopefully, he's learned. I was with him the next morning in the pool, and he seemed chill. Like, he didn't seem like it was bothering him. So, I mean, and why would it? He's not beaten up. He was completely fine.
Right.
And he's got another fight.
And he won. He won in a spectacular finish, via submission, rear naked choke. And moving on now to the next match, a middleweight championship between Eslam Syaha versus Laïd Zerhouni. Syaha won via judge's decision. What were your thoughts on this match here?
This is it's one of those fights. It was a deficiency of skill. He just kept getting the crowd went crazy when he won, and that was the hometown guy, so to speak. So it was awesome to have kind of a local guy win, because that creates more interest from a local perspective, and more people will want to tune into a product if they have a local guy win, and they might be more interested in dabbling in martial arts themselves. So it was great that he won, but you saw it was really sloppy. There's so many times he was swept and he got tired. The guy's enormous. He used to be like a professional bodybuilder.
That explains it, because he had a crazy physique. He had
and it's like he learned now, when you're in these fights, maybe all this muscle, maybe it doesn't make sense to have it in a fight scenario. Now, who am I to say that? Yoel Romero's like, excuse me, it actually works very well. So it all depends. Yeah, maybe it's just more skill development with that muscle, right? Because Dan Marias, who was calling the fights with us, he's one of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches in Abu Dhabi, former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion, faced Marcelo Garcia in the past, beat Marcelo Garcia. So this is a guy that will teach you good jiu-jitsu. And he's like, well, that's all it takes, is you have to just come and you have to train jiu-jitsu, and you have to learn positional wrestling, and you have to learn fundamentals. And the only way to do that is to come and do that. So
yeah, and and you guys were making those points in the commentary as to what was, what the strengths were and what those gaps and deficiencies were. And I mean, it's all potential, right? It's all there. These guys they're gonna train and only get better. And Eslam Syaha, obviously, major, opportunity for him. He capitalized on it. You call it sloppy, and I think anyone who watched that fight would probably agree. It certainly was sloppy. He still won the match overall, so we're hoping to see more of him. But leading on now to the Bantamweight championship between Your boy, to tell us who was fighting in the bantamweight for the bantamweight.
I mean, the main event was just awesome. It was Fabricio Sarraff taking on Xavier Alaoui from TriStar, the Canadian. You know, I'm biased. Of course, I've called a number of Xavier's fights. I've been out with the dude. He's fun. It was the same thing with Jesse in the main event. You know, I want these guys to win, but that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant if I just treat the fights the way they are. And, you know, like it was some craziness that happened in that main event. It was exactly what every fight fan hopes it would be. Back and forth, two skilled, very, very, very skilled fighters, and they're ready to throw down and to deliver fireworks. And like they delivered,
they delivered. Yeah, hallelujah, they delivered, man. Yeah. Tell us how it finished, because I mean, people need to see it. Tell us, set it up.
It was carnage. It was carnage. It was Sarraff landed I believe it was a left hook and dropped Alaoui bad. It looked like it was over. Like all of us cage side, my heart's absolutely racing. You see a friend get dropped like that, and it's like, oh yeah, the title's gone. You're not taking that title home. And then on top of that, more importantly for me is I don't want him to get hurt. And these guys are different, and that's what it's very. You sometimes it's impossible to put into words because most people don't have this in them to get hurt like that, to be able to get back to a standing position, to be on guard and fire back viciously and on point to drop Sarraff and get on top and knock him out and win this title. Like, just the place went bonkers. I went bonkers. My broadcast team went bonkers. It was it's just, again, one of those awesome moments to get to be a part of, and to see these warriors really live up to what we all elevate them to be, is to these. And then afterwards you see the mayhem and the aftermath of Alaoui's face. Like he won, and his face was blown apart.
Wow.
You know, he's like, you see him in the bowels of the arena. He just had to be all stitched up, and he won. You know what I mean? And then you saw Sarraff so upset, like, you know, he was crying in the back because, you know, this meant everything to him. This is their livelihood. They're all chasing a dream. So you get to see all perspectives, and you know, that's really like that's how you want to end 2 nights of mixed martial arts live on UFC Fight Pass, is to you know, go out with, you know, fireworks like that, especially, you know, going into the Canada Day weekend and the 4th of July. It was really perfect.
Yeah, it was spectacular. You're right. The finish was spectacular, and as you said, it's the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. But you know, Alaoui winning that, he certainly, the promo he cut at the end where he's basically asking he wants to meet the Moroccan king because he's originally from Morocco, and we'll see if that happens. But either way, congratulations to him, and who knows, maybe Sarraff will get a rematch. But overall, there were 13 matches in total. As I mentioned, there were fighters from 13 countries, Arabic countries. Great representation, including one women's match between mispronouncing names here, sorry, Iman Al-Mudhaf versus Rewan Yasser, which I was really impressed by Iman. I thought, like, wow, this is, you know, a big talent and big prospect for women's MMA. What were your thoughts on her and her opponent?
Yeah, exactly. Yasser, she came in fit. She was ready to fight. I mean, she has a bunch of fights under her belt, so this was a good opponent. And for Iman, this is big. You know, she's blazing new trail in a new part of the world, and she's going to be a role model for a lot of fighters. And I think the barriers are being broken down, and for UAE Warriors to give her a platform, I think it's amazing. It's something I'm sure that many people never expected something like this, maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. So to see this, it's like, yeah, that's very, very progressive, and that's kind of what we want.
And it's with mixed martial arts too, which is incredible, right?
It's
with mixed martial arts is bringing this progression as far as women in combat sports worldwide, particularly in the Middle East. But what did you think of her grappling, man? In terms of, I think her profile says that she's a Muay Thai fighter, but her grappling was like her wrestling, her ability to take her opponent down, and get into position and just and dominate essentially. What were your thoughts?
You saw that was the goal, and that's one of the things that because I think they said she was training out of British top team, right? Great Britain top team. Mm-hmm. So the goal is you're expanding your grappling abilities and your wrestling abilities, and you see that, like, if you're a Thai boxer, you need to get better at that. Those facets of the game, and to see that she's making the proper moves, and you saw her being heavy on top, and it was going for the takedown. So it was like you see the improvement and the idea of, okay, in order to get good, we have to get good at this stuff, and seeing those improvements and seeing that strategy executed is it was pretty fun to watch.
It was, man. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, 2-3 years from now, she makes that leap over to PFL, Bellator, UFC, etc., and so forth. Besides the title fights, John, which other fighters really captured which fighters made the biggest statement for you?
Yeah, for me, it's the Adam Sakini. Just we were just blown away, just because it's not just the athletes that get involved in this. Some people are willing to get involved in mixed martial arts and professional mixed martial arts that are good because they have a specific attribute or this or that. There's some things that you can't teach, and there's some, when you see certain abilities, and for Sakini, for him to get hurt by breaking that ankle, and every time he got dropped, like, his eyes were actually clear, and he got hit hard. And to see this ability for him to absorb this punishment and still move forward and not give up and, find a way like that, like, it was just really remarkable and thrilling. And I just told him afterwards, I said, don't ever do that again. Don't ever get dropped 4 times. Like, it was awesome that you did that, but be more defensive. Like, well, I understand you're trying to build fans and whatnot, but, like, and he didn't understand a word I was saying.
Oh, well, it's too bad, because you're giving him some golden advice, because you're giving him advice that's valuable well beyond his career, right? In terms of long-term health and well-being. And Adam Sakini, we hope to see more of him, obviously, once he recovers. But I'll ask you again, who was the fight of the night for the Arabia 8 series? Who took it?
Probably Eslam.
Interesting.
Yeah, the co-main event. Even though Alaoui has Moroccan roots, he's still the Canadian, and where Eslam he represents the area. So, and just to see one of their guys win the title, and he looks the part, and people were going nuts for him. So, people were going nuts for Alaoui as well. Like, it was. But again, when you see the local guys win, it's fun, because it's you're seeing something built, and you're seeing support of a local, because these guys were treated like they were the biggest names on planet Earth. Like this, it really felt like these fighters thought they were Francis Ngannou or Khabib. You know what I mean? Like, it was really, really fun. So for these athletes to, walk down that catwalk with the explosions and the crowd chanting your name, and you you have that hard fought victory, and you get the Arabia title around your waist, and you have I'm pretty sure it was one of the royal family giving him the belt. So like, you are on top of the world.
Big time.
So just that whole experience is, I think, and I think the fans could feel that. Like, it was just one of those things that everybody that was there to support Arab mixed martial arts kind of got what they wanted.
Yeah, man, it was certainly for me as a viewer and fan of this sport. I was it was first time ever seeing this particular brand, and I must say I was very impressed overall with all aspects of it, the entertainment value, the quality of the fights, and production, and so on. So it's great to see, and looking forward to seeing more of it. Now, John, you've given me more than an hour of your time. I don't want to take more of it, but I do have a few more questions just outside of this topic. You're doing some commentary for some other promotions, obviously in North America, that are being broadcasted on FightPass. Can you tell us what's next on your agenda? What fights are you looking forward to?
Okay. Well, in a couple of weeks, I'm doing being a part of the XMMA crew. It's going on in South Carolina. On that card, Austin Hubbard, UFC veteran Austin Hubbard. I can't even believe he's not fighting in the UFC. This guy's an action fighter, highly skilled, super fun to watch. I would not be surprised if he makes his way back to the UFC after a win in XMMA. XMMA is really, the goal is to just put on the greatest fights that they could possibly put on. The last show had John Dodson versus Francisco Rivera in the main event. Jesse Taylor's going to be on this card. Just really loaded with insane talent. Andre Harrison, like, just so many incredible fighters. And that's coming up the 23rd of July in South Carolina. And then, Unified MMA, Samurai MMA, bunch of other things on the go. So it's fun to get back to calling fights. It's, I think, what I have the most fun doing. And, I'll do it till the day I die, or until they tell me I can't do it anymore.
Well, you're certainly a veteran of this, as far as the telling of these fighter stories in Canada, and now, of course, on FightPass, which is being broadcasted all over the world. You just commented overseas in the fight capital of the world, Abu Dhabi. So it's great to see you covering the sport. Obviously, the last 2 years in the sport here in this country, amongst many other sports, combat sports, contact sports, you name it, sports kind of took a break. Question for you: what is, and I asked you this 4 years ago, and you gave me an answer, and I think I'll ask you the same question now, and I'll keep asking you this question. What are your thoughts on the state of Canadian professional mixed martial arts as of right now, from your point of view? What can you tell us as far as Canadian fighters and their ability to fight in the big leagues abroad?
Yeah, I think Canadian mixed martial arts is probably as good as it's ever been. I think right now, especially, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it, that you have a clear number one mixed martial arts promotion in the country, and that's Unified MMA, hands down. I think if you look at it objectively, it's they have no problem telling you that they're a proving ground and a platform for these young athletes to go from amateur to professional, win a bunch of fights. They can become champions and then make their way to the UFC. So many fighters have been recruited: Mitch Clark, Tanner Bozer, KB Buller. It's one of those organizations that is amazing. The arena is always full. The environment is awesome. The fights are super exciting. And, Mitch Clark has just been one of the best broadcast partners I've ever had. He's articulate, and he's fun, and he understands MMA. And it's just been a joy to work with those guys and to see the athletes from that part of the country And then again, you look at what Samurai MMA is doing. Lucky to be a part of that organization as well in Montreal. And you're seeing all the French fighters. And then if you look at the BFL, all the fighters out in BC, it's like a very, very healthy time for Canadian mixed martial arts. And there's already the next crop of crew that are doing well in the UFC.
Right on. It's you're right. It's very interesting, right? From Quebec all the way to Alberta, all the way to BC. You've got these big promotions, and they're doing their thing and they're pumping out fighters and creating lots of opportunities. Last question for you. In terms of amateur mixed martial arts, we've got the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation putting on events all over the world. What are your thoughts on the rise of well, they've been around for a decade now, but in terms of amateur, international amateur mixed martial arts and its potential in terms of further.
Yeah, I like amateur. I asked this question with a lot of the fighters. Some of the fighters like amateur, some don't, and it's like, well, how long do you stay amateur? Like some of the fighters feel like you be 3-0, 4-0, that's it. Time to go to the pros. And some are like, no, you get as much experience as humanly possible before you go to the pros. But, so does that mean that I'm, now 15-1 or 15-0 and I can fight somebody that's, 3-0? So, I mean, I like the idea. It's just like anything. It's a work in progress. So I think if everybody gets on the same page and if everybody adheres to the same guidelines and, has the same goals in mind for amateur mixed martial arts, it can be a good thing, but you just never know. I mean, I don't mind it. I think it's because everybody has amateur doesn't always mean the goal is to get a bunch of amateur fights and then become pros. Anybody can compete in an amateur fight. Right. You know what I mean? You have just regular people in there. So, I mean, I think there's just too many factors to consider. But I mean, I love it. It's fighting. So, and sometimes it's sloppy fighting, which a lot of the times it's sloppy fighting because it's amateur. Right. You're speaking mainly about amateur at the regional level, right? In terms of like within Canada. Fair enough. Now, overall, last question for you, where can people follow you on social media? Because you're doing a lot of work with different promotions. And I'm sure they want to know where we can follow you. Tell us, where can we follow John Ramdeen? Yeah, I suck at doing this. I guess I got to do it. I think it's Ramdeen John at Instagram. And again, if you want to add me as a Facebook friend. But other than that, just watch me. I'll just tune into UFC Fight Pass. I'm doing stuff there. And I got a bunch of other things in the go. But yeah, I mean, you'll see me there or Samurai, one of their live streams or I'm sure I'll let the world know if I'm involved in anything that's upcoming, but I appreciate it. Right on, man. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed this, and I hope we get to do it again. And I'm sure you're going to have more stories from your future events. Welcome back to Canada. Oh, and by the way, did you get your luggage? I got my luggage. Yeah, I was afraid. I got my luggage. Luckily, I checked it on the way there, so it was afraid, but on the way back I said, you know what, I'm gonna use it as a carry-on, so there's no issues, because I heard Pearson was a nightmare. So used it as a carry-on, so no issues. Smart man. All right, brother, take it easy. Thank you very much. Take care, man. We'll talk to you soon.